Welcome to the Sweep College Baseball Podcast, where we run through all the top talking points of the past week in college baseball. We will start off with the big one, our new number one overall team in the nation, Tennessee. A lot of places had them number one for a while, but we finally had to bend the knee to Tennessee after holding out preseason wise. We did not have as big of expectations as a lot of other places in the media of college baseball. And some people, not going to point fingers, may have predicted them to be the biggest flop of the year, as we had them preseason starting, I believe, number 8 in the country. But now we finally felt that it was necessary to move them to the number one spot after another super impressive weekend, maybe the most impressive out of any team in college baseball this season so far. Now the only team that's undefeated, and they beat Florida on the weekend, sweeping them in impressive fashion, and Florida was able to knock off the only other undefeated team at that point, Florida State, in a midweek game. So it just shows that Tennessee is once again another step above a lot of the other competition out there.
Yeah, it turns out my pick for the most overrated team may in fact have been underrated here. They are just absolutely dominating to start this year, and yeah, really just an impressive all-around series win over Florida. Never really in doubt. Kind of just had control that entire weekend. I think like two of the games were close for a while there, but they pulled away in the end, and it just was never really in question there. So certainly looking like the number one team right now, and hopefully they falter at some point for my sake, but it's not looking like that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's finally time for us to admit when we were wrong, which we were apparently in this point. But I do think we had solid reasoning for the reason why we started them a little lower than many other polls out there, with just the fact that there was so much uncertainty. That we did mention as from the beginning that they have the talent to be a top team, but they just had not had really the playing time all over the place. They just lost so many important starters from the previous season when they won the national championship, and now they hold the record for the most consecutive wins after a national championship, I believe. Now at 20-0, it's just insanely impressive to not, be able to just not sit back at all, even after winning a national championship. Wouldn't expect anything less out of Tony V and his coaching staff, but some players might get a little complacent if that's the case, but obviously they did lose a lot of the top dogs there. So it's surprising and it's not surprising at the same time, right? It's Tennessee. They've really stepped up in the SEC over those past few years and have put together maybe one of the most impressive 5-year runs, even though they've only won one national championship. That could change very soon if things go as planned for what they have been so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, Tony V just continues to do an incredible job. And yeah, like you said, we just didn't really know how those new pieces were going to fit in. You're kind of seeing the flip side of that with North Carolina, another team that kind of filled a lot of shoes. And we thought that that was a team that we thought was a little more proven, and we thought those guys would step up. We weren't as sure about Tennessee, but it's kind of turning out to be the flip side there, as North Carolina's lost 2 weekends in a row now. So that just kind of shows how, two top programs filling in a lot of open spots, how it can go different ways when you're bringing in all those new guys and transfers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Tennessee's always going to bring in some of the best transfers and recruits. It's kind of the same with North Carolina there. Tennessee has definitely taken the step, it seems like every year. They're just pulling in the number one recruiting class consistently at this point. Tony Vitello knows what he's doing with that regard and coaching on the field, so he's deserving of another huge contract bump, even though he keeps getting new ones. It seems like every year, and the rate of things are going, he continues to deserve what he's getting there. But heading over to, I think, maybe the second biggest news story from the past week is the Rice hiring of a new head coach. They fired their previous head coach a week ago, had an interim for a week, and quick turnaround to get David Pierce, who used to be the UT coach, just after a terrible start at Rice. It really seemed like the obvious hire. Everybody in the media seemed like everybody was pointing to the exact same person. And David Pierce is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, has had a lot of success within the state of Texas, and Rice does have some resources, so hopefully they're able to turn it around. It's a program that's seen success previously, and you might be asking, when is he going to start his coaching here, since he was at a previous job this year as well. But he will be starting this Friday, so quick turnaround. It'll be interesting to see, how the team kind of meshes around him and see if they're able to turn it around and get the season heading in a positive direction.
Yeah, it is interesting with how short the leash was for the previous head coach firing this early in the season. Obviously, they had a pretty rough start to the year, but usually you don't see like a new head coach jump in the middle of a season. There's usually an interim filling the spot for a while, see if they can right the ship a little bit, and you never know, maybe they can fill in and take in that head coaching job. But no, they Rice decided to flip things around as quick as possible and hopefully get the train on the right tracks here with this David Pierce hiring. But all signs point to this being a successful hiring. Everybody seems pretty enthusiastic about it. So time will tell what he's able to do with this program and hopefully right the ship.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring in a coach that has had a lot of historic success, it took Texas to Omaha numerous times, and so there should be some carryover there. And like I said, I think having those roots within the state as well is very beneficial. So I think there's a lot of hope for the program, and we'll see how long it takes to get going.
Yep, definitely. And now looking back at our rankings, you mentioned North Carolina earlier. We'll put our rankings on the screen on YouTube if you want to check that out. If you're listening to audio only, YouTube, The Sweep Baseball. Check us out. North Carolina dropping down to 16. Felt like we could drop them further after losing back-to-back weekends. That is a really bad sign. Typically, that would be the case where we drop them maybe to the back end of the top 25, but they're really at that back end. A lot of teams struggled. There was a lot of pretty big head-to-heads, ranked matchups, especially in the SEC, ACC. So a lot of those back end ranked teams struggled as well. So North Carolina only falling to 16. Right above them is 15 Florida, who also, like we mentioned, struggled the past week getting swept. But, picking up that midweek win at Florida State is, still impressive. Got that win off the board and made sure Florida State got the first loss at the hands of a rival.
Yeah, and same thing with North Carolina, also picking up that midweek win over UNC Wilmington, who's been a decent club the last couple of years. So a decent win there. And, North Carolina back-to-back weekend losses, but still sitting with a 16-4 overall record. And that is, pretty in line with pretty much every team in that like 10 to 20 range, even the back end of the rankings as well. So, although it might seem like we should move them towards the back after back-to-back weekend losses, they're really in line with everyone else, and we still have a lot of trust in the team to get it turned around. Have one of the best Friday pitchers in the country, and so they should be able to get things going. We'll see if they're able to this next.
Yeah, I mean, and if they lose this next weekend series, they're out of the top 25. They'll have a pretty quick, shove out if that's the case. I mean, losing 3 weekends to start conference play is not what you like to see. Definitely need to see better results, even if their record shows that it's pretty good. But speaking of teams in a new conference, I want to look at Oklahoma and Texas, both now breaking into the top 10 here. Super impressive weekends by both. First tests on the road in conference in the SEC for both of them. Oklahoma going to South Carolina, winning that series, and Texas going to Mississippi State and getting the sweep. So really impressive. Usually, there might be a little hangover in a new conference. You never know what you're going to get. You're probably going to get everybody's best, which, I mean, you'd think the same thing with Tennessee after winning the national championship the previous year, but it seems like they're able to overcome all odds. And similarly with Oklahoma and Texas, they're showing up in this conference and showing out to start the year.
Yeah, really impressive stuff from both of them first year in the conference, especially Texas here, now winning 17 straight games. And that first game was a loss in 10 innings to Louisville, and that's not looking like a bad loss at all at this point, with Louisville jumping all the way up to 18 in our rankings. Back-to-back weeks of teams beating North Carolina and jumping up to that 18 spot. So Yeah, not a bad loss at all. And yeah, Texas, one of the hottest teams in the country, probably right there behind Tennessee.
Yep, for sure. And speaking of Louisville, yeah, the weekend series versus North Carolina getting that win, and they hadn't faced amazing competition for most of the year, but started the year really well. Got on people's radars, at least on ours. So they've been hovering right around that end of the ranking spot. Just haven't had that one marquee weekend to bump them in, and they finally have that against North Carolina. Similarly with Stanford the previous week to bump them all the way up to that number 18 spot. So, yeah, super impressive what we've seen from Louisville. It seems like people were, for some reason, down on them after having pretty much one bad year. Louisville has been in the top 25 for most seasons, and for them to finally make it in is good to see, and they deserve that spot.
Yeah, I feel like we just said Louisville and Stanford both jumping into the 18 spot. I feel like they're really similar stories on the season. Both just had bad years last year, but have had a lot of success in recent history. Obviously, Stanford more with three straight appearances to Omaha, but Louisville as well has been a top 25 program, has hosted some regionals and had some postseason success, and certainly a team you think about when you think of some premier programs in college baseball. So not surprising at all to see both of those working their way back up now.
Yeah, definitely. And we can talk about another premier brand in baseball with UCLA jumping in our top 25 as well. They've had a few down years, but I've been saying this for the past few seasons. It just seems like they're sleeping giants. When you have that much talent in Southern California, you got to be able to flip some of it to be really, really impressive players in college. And I mean, a lot of those players are now going to the SEC, but UCLA, if they're able to keep at least a fraction of the really, really solid high school kids in Southern California, then they have a chance to be a really good team. And it seems like they're finally turning things around. The last few years have kind of unraveled due to injuries, but finally it seems like this team is healthy enough to put together a very solid squad and get in our rankings for the first time this year.
Yeah, you finally don't pick UCLA as your sleeper, and then it's the year they actually start to put it together. So we'll see if it holds up. Maybe it's being in the Big Ten that's sparking a change and giving them some hope getting out of the Pac-12 away from Stanford and Arizona. But yeah, I mean that should be a interesting race now in the Big Ten with looks like Oregon and UCLA leading the way. Yeah, good to see UCLA back in the mix of things.
Yeah, and we can talk about the four teams that dropped out of our rankings a lot this week. A lot of movement at the back end. So the main talking points here: Duke and Texas A&M, both teams we had at the very top of the rankings to start the season, especially A&M, number one overall preseason team. And it's kind of unheard of for a team like that to drop out of the rankings this quickly, only on week 5 now. So Texas A&M, I don't know what's going on there, but pitching doing pretty well, defense abysmal. Similar story, I feel like a few years ago when Jay Johnson first went to LSU, the defense was just not there. The talent was all over, like amazing players in every single position, just could not figure it out defensively. But this A&M team seems like they're in even a worse spot than we saw with LSU a few years ago.
Yeah, it's really a bizarre situation. Like you said, just unprecedented. I think we've seen teams, they get unseated from that number one spot, drop a little lower in the top 10. I think maybe even as far as like top 15 in the last couple of years, but to drop out of the rankings completely is unheard of at this point. Yeah, I mean, still a lot of talent, so there's a potential to turn it around. And it feels like every single year there's one SEC team that gets off to a horrible start and then figures it out late in the year and goes on a run in the tourney. We saw it with Ole Miss a couple of years ago when they won it. We saw it with LSU a couple of years ago when they started horribly in conference play and turned it around as well. So we'll see if it's Texas A&M this year. Hard pick to make right now, but it could be a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And the other teams dropping out of our rankings were Kentucky and Troy. Both of them went 2-2, so not terrible weeks. But when you're 23 and 24, it's going to be tough to stay in the rankings unless there's really nobody that deserves to come in. This week, it seemed like there were a bunch of teams right on the outside looking in that did really well. So we felt like a few more teams deserved to jump in, and Kentucky, Troy right on the outside looking in still. Duke, Texas A&M need a lot for us to see for them to turn around and make their way back into the rankings, especially with both of them now having 9 losses. It's just not even close to any other team in the rankings right now, with like 6. Virginia having that many is the next closest. But yeah, 9 losses at this point, going to take a few weeks, or the rankings go to a complete mess the next few weeks, and there are upsets all over the place for that to happen. But yeah, don't expect to see A&M or Duke coming into the rankings anytime soon. But speaking of the teams that did come in, we had West Virginia, Arizona, like we mentioned, UCLA, and Louisville. I think, yeah, all those teams deserved a spot. West Virginia only played 2 games after their weekend series almost got completely canceled. Was able to get 1 game in on Sunday against Oklahoma State. Got that win there. It was a sloppy one, but got the win, and yeah, now it's 16-1 finally. Deserve to be in that rankings. Just really impressive record, even though maybe they haven't faced the best competition overall. But so many of those games were on the road. You got to give it to them at this point.
Yeah, hard to keep a team out that only has 1 loss at this point, and those 2-2 weeks on the back end of the top 25 later in the year, you probably won't see those teams drop out of the rankings necessarily, but early in the year, there's a lot of teams off to good starts, and you kind of got to keep pace in order to stay in the top 25 if you're on that back end. 2-2 weeks aren't really cutting it when there's teams that are solidifying their resume and picking up impressive series wins and getting 4-0 weeks still. So it's a difficult thing to stay in that back end right now, and giving some other guys some chances that seem like they're just playing a little better at this moment.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to mention our at least perspective on looking at teams in the ACC and SEC specifically is that you just have a lot of potential to jump into the rankings. So if you have a bad week, few missteps there, then you might drop a little bit more than teams that maybe have I don't know, just don't play the level of competition consistently, because you just have that ability to make a huge difference in your rankings if you have a great weekend. If Texas A&M somehow turns it around and wins these next 2 series, probably see them back in, but you don't really have that ability for a lot of these other conferences, especially outside the major 4 leagues there.
Yeah, I mean, at some point in the year, you're going to pick up a bad series loss. That's the case for most teams anyway. And so, like you said, with those mid majors, less chances to pick up those impressive series wins to make up for it. You can see an SEC or ACC team knock off one of the top teams in the country, jump up 10 spots in the rankings, but a lot of those mid majors just don't have that same opportunity to move up, but they're still going to have those off weeks where they just don't play up to that expectation and kind of have to hinder your expectations as far as what they're going to do on a weekly basis.
Right, for sure. I mean, the expectation for them is different than teams in the ACC and SEC. Obviously, you're not expecting a team in the SEC to go on the road and win a series against a top 10 team a lot of the time, so maybe that doesn't get punished as much as it would be for a mid-major that is facing lesser competition and doesn't win on the road. That's obviously a huge blow in comparison to consistently facing top 10 teams and getting a few wins here or there. It's a sliding scale. It's very different when comparing schedules that really have little to no overlap at all in that sense. But now we can get into our series predictions from the past week. Not a great one overall. Once again, North Carolina bites us in the butt here. Both of us picking them to win on the road at Louisville. That did not happen, so bringing down our record overall cumulatively when 500 here. Only strayed on one different pick here with Arkansas at Ole Miss. You went Arkansas, I went Ole Miss here. Arkansas was able to pull it out, but yeah, not the best, especially because of that North Carolina, Louisville, and then also UCSB at Hawaii. Always going to be a tough one to go on the road to Hawaii, especially because it seems like they've put together a pretty good squad this year. But yeah, us both choosing UCSB here is not the best, just in sense of our overall predictions in the long run, but could be worse. But obviously, we take Tennessee every week. They're going to show up at this point.
Yeah, a little bit of a tough overall weekend combined, and like you said, the one difference being that Arkansas Ole Miss series, and looked like Ole Miss might take that one, got off to a good start there, picking up the Friday game. And somehow Arkansas pulled that series off, not in the fashion they normally do. It was with the offense instead of the pitching. The pitching was lacking this weekend in that series, which was a little surprising there. Arkansas is an interesting team. If they get the pitching back on track and the offense is like that, they're extremely dangerous. But the last year or two, we haven't seen the offense playing at that level.
Yeah, preseason, this was all the talk was if the offense can just be marginally better than it was last year, and it's just a completely flipped script here. The offense looks like one of the best in the country right now. They are hitting the just cover off the ball, pitching taking a step back here, so they should be able to get back on track just with the amount of talent they have on the pitching staff. That was the primary focus, what seemed like the team had coming into this year. But yeah, Arkansas looks like a very solid club, and yeah, getting that win on the road at Ole Miss was super impressive and almost bumped Ole Miss out of the rankings for us. But yeah, that was decent week for predictions. Lots of amazing series, and we can look ahead to the next week coming up. But before that, we will look at our top play of the week.
0-1 pitch. Swings away. Great diving play by Herrera. Steps on the bag at third and throws to first for the double play. That's a Sports Center top 10 nominee, Herrera, with a 5-3 double play.
So here we had Patrick Herrera with the diving stop at third, touching the bag from the ground, and then throwing over to first for the double play. Just insanely impressive for the Kentucky third baseman. One of the best plays I've seen this year, and to be able to string it all together was yeah, just super impressive.
Yeah, just really good awareness to make sure he catches the bag there before throwing it over. You see plenty of plays like that where they step on the base and get the double play, but from the knees and being able to get the toe over there, get both outs, just super impressive altogether.
Yeah, and now heading to our player of the week, we have Parker Bird. Similar story last year, lost his leg in a boating accident, got some playing time, so super impressive. But now, coming out there, hitting a sac fly on Wednesday, getting his first RBI and then his first hit on Friday. Super impressive stuff to be able to do that. They weren't blowout games, but to be able to come in and show out and do your job is super impressive given the circumstances.
Yeah, just awesome resiliency from him, just pushing through that setback in life and just continuing to take advantage of the opportunity he has there and continuing to pursue his passion for the game of baseball. And yeah, just awesome to see.
Yep, for sure, and definitely is a boost to morale for the team. Most likely, a guy would be able to get out there who they probably see at the back end is putting in just insane hours to be able to at least just put himself on the field in comparison to other players that don't need to necessarily do the same. But yeah, super impressive stuff there. And now looking at our upcoming series, this slate is one of the most stacked we've seen in a while, definitely this year. Starting things off, the number 1 overall team in the country, Tennessee, going to number 12, Alabama. Alabama jumping up the rankings pretty quickly for us. Only one loss still. So they've been super impressive. Just swept what was ranked Texas A&M. Obviously, that's not the case anymore with their struggles. But this Alabama squad, offensively at least, has looked super impressive. And Tennessee is Tennessee at this point. So should be a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, that's a big one. The last time that Tennessee lost a series was to Alabama last season. So it's been a long time for them. And, Alabama still is riding on that success, can say they have their number and say they own that series right now. So we'll see if they're able to extend that another year, but should be a good one. And, that's a good football rivalry. And, that energy carries over to baseball too. So hopefully we see some high intensity there.
Yeah, it should be, I feel like, pretty fiery. We've seen in the past this year, Alabama has gotten to a little bit of controversy with some pictures posted online. But I think, yeah, this could be very, very heated, at least on the field. We'll see what happens after the case, but it should be super exciting to watch. And then staying in the SEC, it seems like every single series this week is a very big one. Next one I have put down is number 2 LSU going to number 9 Texas. Both teams have started the year extremely hot. Both of them have one loss, so previous matchup there was one loss in total, and this one only has two. So very, very slim margins and just not losing any games for the most part out of these teams. They've both looked very impressive, and we'll see how it goes on the weekend.
Yeah, I feel like LSU would probably be the safe pick here if they were at home, but this being at Texas adds another layer there. And like we mentioned earlier, Texas is probably the second hottest team in the country besides Tennessee right now. So this should be a great series and really could go either way.
Yeah, for sure. And then staying in the SEC for another absolute heater of a series, we have number 5 Georgia going to number 15 Florida. We'll see if Florida is able to right the ship here, but Georgia has one of the most explosive offenses, maybe the most explosive. They have looked really good, at least offensively. Pitching staff, it's been a little iffy here or there, but they're getting carried by the offense right now, kind of similar to what we saw last year. And we'll have to see if Florida is able to turn it around at home.
Yeah, I feel like this Georgia team is awfully similar to the way they were last year. They're probably going to put up a 10 spot on you, and we'll see if the pitching staff can keep it below that. But yeah, that offense is dangerous, and like you said, one of the best in the country. So this should be a great series. Love that these three SEC matchups were highlighting that the lower ranked team is home in all of them. So adds a nice little layer to make it difficult to predict these ones.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of staying on that same line of thought, we have number 21 Arizona going to number 25 West Virginia. We bumped them both into the rankings this past week to make it just a little bit more catching the eye here with both teams being ranked, but they do deserve it, both teams at this point. They've been really impressive. Arizona has been extremely hot since their first weekend where they looked pretty bad. The only other loss besides that weekend was to Tennessee, so overall they've been able to completely turn things around, and the offense has definitely gotten going, which is what they needed, which we didn't see at the very beginning of the season. And West Virginia only has one loss, kind of speaks for itself. So should be interesting to see who comes out on top, and whoever does stays ranked, and the other team probably drops out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting series. We thought we were going to get a weekend of West Virginia trying to prove it this last weekend, but only got that one game in after the weather issues there. But get a full weekend here against Arizona, and now they're at home this time. Really a chance to solidify that they belong in the rankings, and also for Arizona, a chance to prove that they really flushed that first weekend and it didn't mean anything.
Yeah, for sure. And now going back, I guess, to the top 10, we have number 10 Wake Forest at number 6 Clemson. So flipping the script of what we saw previously where the higher ranked team was on the road, it's the other way around here, but I don't know if it's really deserving. Both teams have been really good. Wake Forest, not necessarily a surprise of the season, but they've been able to put things together a lot better than what we saw last year with the preseason number 1 overall team. Wake Forest just kind of stumbled out of the gates there. This year, that's kind of the opposite. They've looked really impressive overall, and Clemson has been also maybe even more impressive than that. So they started being ranked a little higher and have just kind of held serve there. So both teams kind of in this spot. We'll see how they do against maybe their most, I guess, the toughest competition that they've faced definitely so far this season. So Wake Forest, Clemson should be a very good matchup overall.
Yeah, I feel like the Wake Forest pitching staff kind of took a step back this last season, but we've seen them pull off some crazy player development there, and it seems like that's hitting again this year. They've seen some pitchers from last season taking some big steps up, and the offense they did a good job of replacing all those top picks they lost, and so really just looks like a complete team right now, and was just kind of a little bit of a sleeper after how high they were ranked the previous seasons.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed like Wake Forest being ranked that low to start the year was a little bit of an overstep in a lot of places, and they've showed that they deserve to be in the top 10 at this point, and they have a chance to prove it now and jump even further up after this weekend. But the final series that I have to mention on my side of things is UC Irvine at number 17 UC Santa Barbara. If Irvine's able to come out on the road and take this series, they have a very good chance at coming into the rankings. I'd say they're maybe the number 26 team right now. They've looked very impressive. They probably would have jumped in if they won all their games last week. The only loss coming in a midweek to UCLA. So it's a bit of a tough one there, considering that was their toughest competition. But they have a chance to prove it here against UCSB. UCSB did struggle last week at Hawaii. Still ended up with a 2-2 overall record on the week, but would have been nice to get that series on the road. But it is always tough to play on the island.
Yeah, I mean, these have been the top two teams in the Big West the last few years, and so, this series is a big one, usually deciding who ends up winning the conference, and so we're getting it early in the year this year, but this is definitely going to have huge implications down the road because both of these teams tend to take care of business for the most part against the rest of the conference.
Yeah, definitely. These teams have perennially been on top. We'll see if Hawaii can slip in there and maybe steal it from them, especially with that tough road environment. But yeah, this is typically the matchup to watch for that conference. Any other series to mention incoming this week?
The only other one I have is two more mid-majors right on the outside of our top 25. We have Coastal Carolina at Troy. Troy just dropped out after that 2-2 week, and we also recently had Coastal just on the outside there. I think both of these teams are probably in that 26 through 30 range. Could see the winner of this jumping in the rankings, depending how the teams on the back end perform, but this is a big one for that conference as well, trying to solidify yourself as one of the top dogs there.
Yeah, I'd expect the winner to probably jump in unless they lose a midweek here. So yeah, that's also a huge one to be able to decide which team is taking the edge and showing themselves off as the best team in the conference there. But any other things of note before we end this thing?
That's all for me.
Sweet. Well, appreciate everybody listening, tuning in, watching, wherever you are coming in from. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the Sweep College Baseball Podcast, coming out Tuesday or Wednesday. Peace.